Welcome to the Embodying Excellence podcast. I'm your host, Carlo, and I'm here with Brenden. How are you?
I'm going really well, thank you. What about yourself?
I am good. We had a nice, relaxing end to the week. I was up at the Central Coast, and it was a good time. Got me really thinking about things that are going on, both in my own life and everything else around me. And so, very reflective trip, and I'm really excited to be doing this episode with you. How about you?
Yeah, it was a pretty hectic week, a lot going on. Personal life, outside personal life, just a bit of everything really.
Awesome. What are we talking about today?
Complacency.
Complacency. That's a big subject, especially because we live in a world where that is praised and where people go, oh, no, don't worry about it. Tomorrow is another day. And you're thinking, well, don't put off things for tomorrow that you can do today. And I know this because I have been that person that puts things off for tomorrow when it can be done today. And so understanding that there is a difference between doing something that you know that you can do today and then also being patient for outcomes on things that you're doing daily, every single day. Because if you do get complacent and you stop, what happens is then the momentum slows down and then you're forced to sort of start over. You're sort of like just churning and just running the gauntlet. And so you're like, oh, I'm going to go super hard on my weight loss. And then 4 weeks, 8 weeks later, you're like, oh, I'm eating shit again. And I'll start over. You know what? I'm going to lock in, right? And then every 3 months, it's the same thing. And once again, I've been through that. There have been times that you've been through that. And it's one of those things where it's a habit. And at the same time, if you allow complacency to be a habit, then what ends up happening is that then it becomes your identity. And then when it is your identity, you're being complacent and you'll get defensive. You go, oh no, I'm not complacent. Oh, I got this and I got that. And I don't know how to handle this. No, you've made complacency your identity now because you've habitualized it so much. It's become part of your everyday life. And that's what ends up happening if you don't acknowledge and address it right from the beginning. And so no one's perfect. There are going to be moments where you're like, oh, yeah, you know what? Yeah, we can chill out. It happens. You're a human being. You want to relax. You want things to be comfortable. You want things to be easy. And that's not a bad thing. But if you have a goal and you're ambitious and you put a premium on excellence and capacity, you don't have room for complacency. Not at all. Especially if you've got other people that are in that same wavelength as you are mentally, and they're going, hey, I'm always setting the bar. Hey, I'm always setting the bar. Hey, I'm always setting the bar. And you're still here going, oh yeah, I say that I want to set the bar. I like the idea of having high standards and being excellent, but I don't really do anything to change my situation. You're like, oh, come on. Are you talking or are you going to be doing? And so you've got to be able to nuance between the two.
Yeah, complacency is everywhere. For example, a general day, underestimation and complacency go hand in hand. You think you've got more time than you have, and instead of knuckling down and doing what you need to do, you become complacent and thinking that, oh, there's so much time to do what I need to do, and instead of doing it, you just think, oh, I'll just do this other thing, and then I'll do something else, and then before you know it, the time's gone because you've underestimated what it actually takes. And the more, in a way, the more information that's out there, the more you become complacent because you know if you just execute on those particular areas that you can do it, and you just keep putting it off and putting it off. So that's another thing as well where it's obviously benefited us by having all this information. It's also bred all this complacency into us, thinking that we've got unlimited time, when in actual fact, if we don't commit to taking actions every day, then that time is going to go whether we like it or not. Time's inevitable to go, and it's up to us to make the most of each day.
Well, it's very easy to establish or at least perceive that you've got a lot of time and you're easily distracted and you're complacent because you're going, you know what, I've got time. You don't. You don't. Time has you, right? And your life is ending 1 minute at a time, right? It might not be today. It might not be next week. It might not be next year. It might not even be next decade. It might not even be in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, God forbid, right? But whenever it is, it ends. And so do you want to roll back the years and go, I should have done more, or I should have been more, or I should have been more present when I was working out, or I should have been more present in my relationship, or I should have been more productive and more outgoing and taking initiative when it came to achieving objectives? Should I have been more present? Should I have just stopped and gone, hey, you know what? Let me just enjoy this moment, right? I'll give you an example. This morning, I was in Terrigal for the weekend and there was a beautiful sunrise. And I woken up early as I needed to catch the early bus to get back in time for church. And so what I failed to realize was that the time that I woke up and the bus, there was about an hour in between. And so I get to the bus stop and I need to wait another hour. So I thought, oh yeah, you know what? I got time. I'll go and I'll sit and I'll enjoy the sunrise. And I did. And then there was also a moment where I was like, hey, you know what? I've been working on this thing online for my business. Let's see what's up and just add a few more things. And so I did that as well. And what I realized was that that was also part of my goal life, like as in what my life would look like in my mind if I lived the life that I want to live. I'd be waking up early in the morning, doing some content, watching the sunrise, either with a coffee or a hot chocolate, and moving on to doing more work for the day. I realized that that was the day in the life that I've always wanted, and it's just been right there in front of me the whole time. And because I wasn't paying attention initially in the first place, I missed it because I've lived that day many times, right? And when you're complacent and you don't let things marinate to help build the life that you want and you become complacent, you only get glimpses of what that goal life actually looks like for you and not the everyday consistency where you achieve results that you want. You feel more content. You feel more alive, right? You just exist. And that's what complacency can be. It can be quite damaging because you're existing. And what you're doing is you're coping with your existence by succumbing to distractions and being complacent on the discipline. Like we talked about before, discipline is a form of emotional regulation, as is coping. And so when we use coping, that's when we end up being the most subject to complacency, where if we are focusing on discipline and it isn't even a question, hey, I'm doing this today, this is what I need to do today, this is what I'm getting done today, you get those things done and you learn to be present within that period of time where you're doing that work and you're applying that discipline where you're going, hey, you know what? I can be present and I can be disciplined at the same time. There's no mutual exclusivity where you are disciplined so you're not paying attention or you're not present. Oh, because you're disciplined, you're on autopilot. Oh, you live a prison lifestyle because you're so rigid and you're so disciplined. That's not true. It's not true at all. And I know because I have lived a period of time where I was very disciplined. And then I've lived a period of time where I wasn't disciplined at all. And I felt much better when I was disciplined than when I wasn't, right? I'm sure you can attest to that as well, because there were periods of time where you weren't. And so I'm not going to speak for you because I don't know your story exactly, but I know most of it. And I could probably say that you'd feel the same way. And so understanding that complacency only comes from a place of fear, and it comes from a place of coping with the way that you're living, unless you acknowledge how you how you truly feel about yourself and the way that you're living your life, you will always be prone to complacency.
And complacency also comes from a place of over egotistical behavior or entitlement as well. Like you're thinking, I'm entitled to either someone or someone's service, this or whatever it is. Like for example, if it's a customer, right, and you, rather than looking after them like you should, solving their problems, serving them in the best way you can, instead of doing that, you sometimes, if you're not careful, you get into a mindset of being complacent, thinking that they're going to be your customer no matter what. You don't have to keep putting in those actions, and that can cost you. That can cost you everything. That can cost you the customer. That can cost you relationships. Cost you everything, because the moment you become complacent, you begin to take them for granted. You begin to neglect all the commitment that you gotta take, and you think you're entitled to that. But it's them actions that you have to put in every day in order for you to get what you want back in return, and then have a happy relationship, whether that be personal or like with a customer. Like it's all hand in hand. You have to put in the work. You can't. Nothing's given. And that's the big thing for me about complacency. A lot of people think that everything's given, but you have to put in the work still in order to get what you want from, and for order for everyone to get what they need from it.
Well, I think as well, a lot of the mistake comes from that idea that people feel as though that it's given. And at the same time, when they go and see outside of themselves the success that other people have that they get jealous of, they go, why wasn't I given that? Right? Like, what did they do? How are they better than I am that they get to live like this every single day and I have to struggle this way, right? When you expect for things to be a given, then of course you're not going to live in that echelon of life where if you go, hey, I need to put the work in, this is how things work and this is how I build my repertoire, my reputation, and my ability and capacity, I get to go and choose that life that I decide that I'd like to go live. And so when it comes from a place of courage and when it comes from a place of love, then you're better able to build yourself into a position where things become quite in a flow state for you, where complacency isn't even a thought because you're doing everything that you'll need to be doing. And so it's not like you got to be some monotonous robot. There are going to be moments where you're tempted, right? And you just sidestep those temptations by going, hey, this is what I've got on. And so by keeping yourself on course, you're better able to eliminate those distractions and eliminate the possibility of being complacent. Because once you make that complacency a habit, then enough times repeated, it becomes that belief, it becomes that identity, where if you go the other way around with discipline and action steps for your plan, your project, your health, whatever it is, then you end up repeating those actions to the degree where that becomes the habit, that becomes the identity, and then complacency just becomes very, very slow because you're not focusing on the complacency anymore. You're focusing on the progress.
Yeah, and the more awareness you've got over complacency, the less likely you're going to be complacent as well. Like because of that awareness, if you catch yourself in that moment of thinking that you can get away with doing something that's not what you need to do, and you sort of start to notice time drifting away a little bit, or you notice yourself that you're getting a bit too overconfident in a particular area, then you can sort of dial yourself back and then actually just take on the task that you need to take on, and not get complacent, and be humble and realize that you can grow, and that you're not perfect. You've got to put in the actions just like everyone else. Like, for example, the other day I neglected my sleep a bit. I was doing work and stuff, but I neglected my sleep the night before leg day, and you get sort of in the mindset, I've done it like a few days before, and you get away with it. So you become complacent at that point, thinking, I can push a bit more today because I got away with it yesterday or the day before, whatever it was. And then you come to doing leg day, and you can't push as hard, and it has an effect on the way that you perform. And that happens with every area. It's not just like in the gym, it's everything, like mentally at work, or mentally with speaking to people, whatever it is, it happens. Like, you've got to try and have that awareness that it can happen easier than you think. That to me, like, awareness is a big thing in whether or not you can have complacency take over, or if you can just use it as a pivot to actually, or a standard to set for yourself to not allow it to happen.
Absolutely. And at the same time, what I also want to emphasize too is that when you focus on complacency, like you were saying, then the likelihood of you being complacent increases. But what I also want to add is that if you focus on, I don't want to be complacent, you're still focusing on the complacency, right?
Yeah.
So your conscious mind and subconscious mind aren't the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So if you're consciously going, I don't want to be complacent, subconsciously you're going, I'm going to be complacent, right?
Yeah.
Because the only thing that it's focusing on is the complacency. And so meanwhile, your conscious mind is doing its best to be conscious, your subconscious is already doing the work underneath. And so you need to be able to train yourself to go, I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to be disciplined. And then you focus on the discipline, so that then it's rewiring, so that then complacency doesn't even stand a chance, right? Because if you go, well, I'm not disciplined, right? You're still focusing on the discipline. So even though you remind yourself that I'm not disciplined, then eventually, because you'll get sick and tired of not being disciplined, right?
Yeah.
You're still focusing on the discipline aspect. So the discipline is going to introduce itself eventually,
exactly.
right? But if you are constantly focusing on the complacency or the distractions or the negativity, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
If you go, I don't want these things, right? But your focus is still there, those things are going to eventually introduce themselves. And so that's why being able to affirm life is very powerful, right? And just to dabble in a little bit of religion, right? That's why nihilism, which nihilism in short means that you detest life and life is meaningless, right? That's why it's so much easier to do that than to have some sort of faith in some sort of higher power, because it's much easier to go, you know what? Life is absolutely meaningless. I don't know what I'm doing here. It's very easy to fall victim to that particular narrative and be complacent to the idea that you were born and that you have flesh and that you have a soul and that you have a purpose and you're able to power through whatever obstacles that you have and create something meaningful for yourself. It's much harder to take that path. And so it's very easy to go into a slippery slope where you're going, I don't know if I can live up to this, or I don't know how high I can push myself, or I don't know where I'm going to go. Instead, you're focusing on that affirming power of your ability, of your courage, of your conscientiousness, of your care, your consideration, your kindness, all these excellent traits that help you build and help other people build as well. When you affirm that, there isn't any complacency, there isn't any room, because you put so much into this affirmation, into this power of life that you brought forth, that there isn't any room for complacency. And so the only reason complacency has any room is because you're not putting anything else in there. And so either you're bored, or you don't have a lot going on, or you're just very fixated in the mind and you're not feeling the body. There's no passion, there's no zeal for life, there's no goal or something that you're aiming for. Of course you can fit complacency in there, right? It's like having a busy timetable, right? And you want to go catch up with old mate you haven't seen in years, but he doesn't do anything but sit at home and smoke pot, right? If you've got a busy timetable, you're not going to fit that in, right? Even though he's an old mate, right? And you've known each other for years, the way he lives his life is not congruent to yours, right? And so you're not going to fit that in. Just like if you've got all these things going on for you and complacency wants a little bit of wiggle room in there, you're not going to give it to him, right? Because it's got nothing to do with how you're going to get to your particular goal. Forget it. Complacency is not going to have any space in your timetable, is it?
No,
right.
It's not.
And so understanding that and potentially framing it that way for yourself, where you have your own life timetable and seeing where you can fit some days to be complacent. Man, if you lead a busy life or a purposeful life, you're not going to have that room to fit in that complacency. Because what ends up happening is that complacency, if you do fit a little bit of it, it'll want more. It'll want more. It'll want more. It's never enough. It's never enough. And then once you keep going, and it ends up being endless. And it never is enough. That's why gluttony is like one of the cardinal sins, because like if you just get too used to eating, nothing will ever be enough anymore. And so once you get too used to consuming, nothing will be enough. It's like social media, right? You're scrolling. I shouldn't be scrolling so much, but you know what? I'm so used to scrolling that I'm just going to continue scrolling. Maybe I want to see this next post. Oh, you know what? I reckon the next one's going to be interesting, right? And you stop paying attention altogether. That's when you're most complacent. And that's what ends up happening, that your life just becomes this layer and layer and layer of complacency that becomes a lot harder to dig out of, because it becomes an addiction. And so when addiction becomes identity, hey, that's a different thing altogether. And so just to steer back a little bit to where I was going, because I went on a bit of a tangent there, right? But knowing that you are moving forth with something objective and you're aiming for something, you're not going to have room for complacency. It's just not going to happen.
But then again, as well, with complacency, what someone with a higher standard for themselves would consider complacency would be nothing to another person. So something ever so minimal, even if it's spending 5 to 10 minutes on social media, to me I could view that as like a bit of complacency on my own behalf. But someone that has a lower standard for themselves, and someone that has that as a common behavior for themselves, they're not going to think as complacency either. So it's all relative to the person. So that's why you've got to sort of try and build up that standard in yourself, and then have an awareness of what actually is congruent to what you want to do in life and what you don't want to do.
And that's why we set the bar like for high standards, for inspiration and not expectation. Because the thing is, we can't expect of others what we would expect of ourselves, right? So if, for example, you had high standards, right, and I wanted to be your friend, right? You set the standard because that's who you are. That's the core of your being, right? And so that would inspire me to lift my game up, so that then, one, we see eye to eye and we're at a similar wavelength, and we bond and we build that repertoire and that relationship with one another, and we improve ourselves. Where if I was that friend who, hey, I'm going to work out. Oh, no, you know what? I want to go grab a feed. You know what? Skip the workout. We'll just come have a feed with me, right? That's not being a real friend, right? That's letting complacency come in, and then that's where understanding that there are differences between us, right? And so you going, hey, you know what? that's not for me because I work out and I know that we have a good relationship, and I'm sure you can be understanding that I still haven't had my workout yet, so I'm going to go work out, right? If I'm going, hey, you know what, screw your workout, just come eat with me, like I don't get to see you and everything else, then that level of complacency from you, if you were to come and eat from me, would eat at you, right? Because you're now contradicting the core of your being, right? Catering for me, right? And then if the roles were flipped where you were someone that wasn't of a higher standard when it came to training, or you didn't have standards or boundaries and I did, right? By you going, hey, I'm understanding of what your needs are and I'm going to go train with you and then we can go and eat together. That's being accommodating, right? Or if I went, hey, look, you know what? I know we're friends and we don't see each other very often. Let's just go eat somewhere healthy and let's just spend that time together and then I'll go and train later. That's also being accommodating. But having that communication and understanding each other allows for you to elevate together rather than just go back and forth with one another. Because then if you don't set boundaries, that's where complacency ends up creeping in to begin with. And so having a communications, setting boundaries, and also setting a high standard for yourself and having that expectation for yourself so that it inspires others to go and do the same when they go out and say, hey, you know what? Brendan's always good to be around. Brendan always trains hard. He always has a high standard. He always has a good attitude. I want to be like that. And someone else goes out and does that, right? Where if on the other end of that, they go, oh, Brendan trains really hard, but he's a dick and no one really wants to be around. Like no one's going to gravitate towards that, right? Yeah. And then when that ends up happening, then because no one sticks around and no one's really holding you accountable, complacency just tends to creep in, right? And so by having a good network and having things that are going to help you develop into the person that you want to become and achieve the goals that you want to achieve, then there isn't any reason why complacency should even have any room to sneak in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point. The last one with how your network is, that plays a big part in that.
Well, we're social creatures.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, as isolating as being by yourself can be, we're always networking and we're always in people's proximity. And so when you have a set core being, right, whatever that might be, the way that you interpret people just from a distance is indicative of that core being. And so if you're somebody who operates out of fear, if you're around strangers, the likelihood of you talking to them is going to be very low, right? And then when you introduce the idea of forming new friendships and talking to strangers with that core being and that core identity, your complacency is going to be very high because you're always going to be making excuses onto why you're not going to talk to strangers or why you can't approach that woman or why you can't make that new friend, right? Because the core of your being is that you're afraid of talking to new people, right? Where if that core is, hey, I love networking, other people love networking, and I love being around me and other people love being around me, then that's going to be an easy conversation because you are so aware of yourself and you affirm so much about yourself as well that complacency is going to be very low, right? Which is why the Live Hard program is so good because you're forced to repeat certain behaviors that affirm both life and reduce the possibility of complacency. And so when you go and do those things properly, you allow yourself not only the bandwidth of possibility expanding because you've now expanded that comfort zone and you've stepped out of it multiple times, but you've also then allowed yourself to grow because you've seen possibility rather than consequences. And so with that being said, when you separate complacency with discipline and you go, hey, look, discipline is the way that I'm going to move forward, and you don't give yourself that room for complacency, and you constantly evolve that core identity that you live with, then complacency is nothing more than just the brain going, oh, hey, look, we have another option, right? But then there's also that zero options mentality anyway, where you go, actually, I don't have options. I think I have options. I think I have time, but in reality, I don't. I just have what's in front of me right now and the things that I need to do so that then I can go and live the life that I'm after.
Yeah, it's good. With the Live Hard program, I sort of, especially phase 3 of it, that left no room for complacency whatsoever. There was that many tasks to do in the day. Like if you couldn't simply afford to have any complacency creep in, or else you'd fail the day, and
Absolutely.
then it would have failed the whole Live Hard program, the whole year. So by having that standard there or measures in place that you've got to stick to, that virtually eliminates any complacency.
Exactly. And I think to sum up this episode, you just need to have things in place, things that matter to you, things that mean something to you. Because when you assign no meaning to things, what ends up happening is then you just wander, right? And things just wander and things are just left in limbo, right? Which is what I was saying about the nihilism thing before, right? Because nihilists love to say that life is meaningless, right? And they're often the ones most depressed because they haven't really assigned any meaning to anything, right? And so they can be stoic for a little bit, but then once emotions really overwhelm them and they don't really know how to deal with that, then the nihilism ends up just going out the window and then they just become depressing moralizers, right?
Yeah.
And so when you are believing enough to affirm life, to affirm love, to affirm courage, to affirm objectives and goals and a reality that you can build from the way that you think and the way that you identify yourself, then that's when things come to be, they manifest themselves, and it leaves zero room for complacency. And so the Live Hard program is a good supplement. It's a supplement because what it does is it gives you the guide and it gives you the tools to be able to create some sort of pathway for yourself so that then when you are going about your day every single day, you have a task list that you go and get done, that you tick off, and then you feel accomplished once it's done. And so it's a supplement. It's a way of life, but it's also a supplement that enables you to live out the very thing that you desire through the work that is earned and not that is given. And it leaves absolutely no room for complacency whatsoever.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums up everything.
Thank you for tuning into today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Don't be a hoe.
Share the show.
Have a good weekend.